think the key thing in building a podcast engagement strategy is to think about exclusive material, bonus content. What can you offer your listeners that they can't get elsewhere? Can you give them something that will make them come to your website or to some other part of your online presence and engage properly with the content you're doing? You could couple that with transcribed and editorialized pieces that add a little bit of extra material. But I think that the key thing is to give them something exclusive that will make them move from the podcast to your other online presence.
Verizon Media is an on-the-channel platform with a content creation arm also known as Right Media. So what we're able to do is reach audiences and speak to them in the way that fits our editorial voices. So the client came to us who really wanted an intimate conversation with the users because they found out that actually women on average spend an hour more working than men. So our approach to this was to create a podcast series, and that what we were able to do was also seed out and build out an audience using our editorial voice and also native distribution.
We have three main ways in which we have developed the commercial opportunities around the Week Unwrapped. The first is that we're part of Global Radio's DAX advertising network, which injects adverts into episodes as they're downloaded. That gives us a regular weekly stream of revenue, which just helps to keep us ticking over. And we supplement that with cross-media partnerships with clients who want to reach our audience on the podcast, but also in the magazine and on the website. So, for example, earlier this year, we worked with Lombard Asset Finance on a partnership which involved a media buy in the magazine, some sponsored downloads and articles on the website, but also a series of 5 special episodes of The Week Unwrapped focusing on business innovation. And they were released in between regular episodes of The Week Unwrapped. And then the third and final way we've brought in a new stream of revenue has been using the podcast to promote subscriptions to our magazine and to our digital app. We found that podcast listeners are really engaged with the brand. They like what The Week does, and so they've proved a very fruitful pool of new readers for the magazine and a future source of revenue.
We take 2 approaches to developing a commercial strategy. The first is to develop slowly over time. So with our podcast Women Tech Charge, we started with 1 series to test the water and build an audience. The second series was targeted at building momentum by submitting for awards. And then the third series will be where we start to really target commercial partners. The second approach is to prove an audience first to get the data that the commercial team can then take to market. So we publish 55 short form audio news stories into Google. That gives us some rich data. We know which areas are performing well, and then we can target those areas to commission longer form podcasts that the commercial team can take to market to find a partner.
What I've learned is that if your voice is consistent, your ethos is consistent, it doesn't matter where your audience is. It doesn't matter what touch point they find. I've got some people who listen to the podcast and read the magazine. Some people just turn up at events or something like that. It doesn't matter. As long as at the heart of it is the core ethos of you and what you want to say and the humanity at the heart of it, it doesn't matter which touch point they take. As long as they're listening and reading and whichever way they prefer to listen, in my case, to what Film Stories puts out.
In terms of the lessons that we've learned about growing audiences between platforms, it's not an easy job, but it can be done. And I think the way to do it is to think about why you're doing that podcast. And if the reason that you're doing that podcast is to grow paid subscribers or to sell a book or a paid for newsletter, then I would really highlight what it is about that podcast that could lead people onto that onward journey. That said, we're never afraid to look at a podcast as a retention perk. So there might be people who already subscribe to the Telegraph who would stay much more engaged or be introduced to new facets of our journalism through that podcast. So a way that we did that using our podcast expenses was to highlight the journalism that we'd done. It was 10 years ago, the expenses scandal, when we did this podcast, and to highlight the journalism that we'd done 10 years ago to show people the value of long-term investment in quality journalism, which in this case led to the discovery of the MP's expenses scandal.